Painters, gardeners, all kinds of people doing things in and about a household. What happens if somebody gets hurt? Well, that takes us to this week's case. Involves a real couple in the state of California, Wayne and Laurie Charkins. Now, Wayne and Laurie were going to have a large living room painted, really big living room. It had an 18-foot cathedral ceiling. And Wayne and Laurie hired a casual laborer, a guy by the name of Paul Hestehauge. Now, Paul was a guy that was not licensed by the state of California. He was a painter. They'd gotten to know him through mutual friends. And on the first day of the job, Paul's there, he's painting, and he's working off a scaffold, and unfortunately suffers a fall, bad injury, literally falls on his head, suffers a head injury and an upper neck spinal injury. Bad news. He brought claim. He brought claim under workers' compensation. Now, he said, I'm here working, I'm in the course and scope of employment, I'm entitled to get workers' compensation, which means my medical expenses will be paid, and I will get temporary total disability or a weekly payment while I'm off work. On the other side of that coin, the folks, Wayne and Laurie, argued, no, you are not covered. You're not covered. And they looked to the specific statute, and through their lawyer, they argue you're not covered because in California, in order to be covered, you need to work at a job for at least $100 or 10 days. And in this instance, you weren't paid $100, nor had you worked 10 days. You were hurt on the first day of the job. Well, on the other side of that, Paul, through his lawyers, is arguing, no, I would have worked more than 10 days and certainly would have made more than $100 if I'd been allowed to complete the job. Anyway, the case winds its way through the workers' compensation application process in California, eventually gets up to the Work Comp Board. And then the Work Comp Board comes down with a decision, and they said, you know what? Wayne and Laurie, you guys are right. You guys are right. Paul, you didn't work enough hours. You weren't paid enough money to be considered as covered under workers' compensation. Therefore, no workers' compensation benefits. But you can now bring a claim for personal injury. And if you find that Wayne and Laurie were at fault in any way for your injury, you can sue them personally. Now, workers' compensation is no fault, doesn't make any difference who's at fault. You get paid for your medical expenses and some of your time off. But under a personal injury claim, you need to establish somebody's at fault. And sometimes accidents happen not because somebody's at fault, but simply because accidents happen because somebody stepped the wrong way and fell off a scaffold or whatever else happens. So, what do we learn from this case? What we learn from this case is that if you are a homeowner, you're going to hire somebody, you need to be familiar with your state's law as to workers' compensation. If you're going to hire somebody for a long period of time, hey, you better be doubly aware of what goes on with regard to workers' compensation. Every state is slightly different. Some states set up categories for various employees who work in and about a home. In this instance, we saw that California at that time in history, at the time that case was decided, or at least arose, it took a long time for it to finally get decided, but at the time that case arose, the law provided that a casual laborer needed to work for at least 10 days or be paid $100 total. Now, some states have those kind of provisions, providing how much time you have to work or how much you have to be paid. They also have provisions sometimes for gardeners. In some instances, gardeners who work 40 hours in a month are excluded from workers' compensation. In some instances, domestic servants like maids who work sometimes as much as 40 hours a week are excluded from workers' compensation. But that means that they can also bring personal injury claims against somebody if that person is actually at fault for their injuries. So what do you need to do if you're going to be employing people like this? Well, you need to do two things. You need to, one, find out what your state provides. The easiest way to do that is talk to workers' compensation applicant's attorney. Another thing you need to find out is what about your insurance policy in the event suddenly you are deemed to have to have workers' compensation coverage. Would you have it? All right, that's something you check out with your insurance agent. Hey, we bring you this case as we bring you cases every week so you understand how the law works. I'm David Allen.